What are your thoughts on the Great White Homunculus, Boris Johnson?
How's it going, Lance,
It's
in
good. It's
the Great
good.
White North?
The Great White. That is how they refer to us. Um, Not much. It's things are good. I mean, outside of the Amazon rainforest burning and other kerfuffles around the globe right now. Trying to put a smile on the day, as you know. That's kind of what we do around here.
Nice work.
Why don't I start with some quick introductions? Because I doubt there's anyone who's not familiar with your work here. I think there's a lot of overlap between the two of us, but why don't you tell the people a little bit what you do?
Yeah, hi, guys. I'm Dan. I have a YouTube channel where I very occasionally upload videos, mostly centered about history and politics, since I think April last year, and people happen to like it most of the time, luckily.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's basically it. Come subscribe.
How did you get started in that? What made you want to start making these videos? Was it you had seen one too many Steven Crowder movies or videos or
Oh man, like right getting into Steven Crowder right away.
right
No.
out of the gate?
So I was thinking about that for a while to actually do that. And then I saw that video isn't online anymore, but that was my first video.
Hmm.
Like some like of the YouTubes, I'm neither left nor right,
Hmm.
like one of those personalities,
Yeah.
making some very odd comments about the Holocaust, as radical centrists used to do sometimes.
Hmm.
And I thought, hey, why not do a video about that? And then I kind of had fun doing it. And then I kept doing stuff
Hmm.
and kind of took off from there. It's not a very spectacular story, but that's really how it happened.
um, how do you know so much about history? Because I'm an amateur historian, and I love to obviously watch people like you who seem to know a wealth about certain subjects, and then just get spellbound by the little intricacies that I never knew or thought about.
um, I think the key to that is I have a good local library,
Mm. So you're
which
saying it's
has a bunch of
socialism?
books.
It's strong social
Yeah,
programs.
exactly. I have a good look at it, and they all have all kinds of books that I need. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I actually know that much. I
Mhm.
think people get that perception because I spend a lot of time preparing for a certain topic,
Mhm.
and then can like confidently um, like give out this information. But um, I don't know. Like maybe I just have more time on my hands to read books than you. That's probably it. Yeah.
So are you formally educated or are you self-taught?
I'm still an undergrad in cultural studies, but with a main focus on history. So yeah, might contribute to it. But I've just started out, so
Mhm.
um,
Oh,
doesn't give me a head start.
absolutely. What made so we spoke a little bit about Steven Crowder at the start of this. What made you
Hmm.
particularly target him? Because you've done a couple Crowder videos. You've done. I think I first found you with one of your Peterson videos, and that was before
Hmm.
BreadTube was even a thing. That was like maybe a year ago, or maybe before that. I mean, I'd like to say that I discovered you back when you were like 10,000 subscribers or something, but
Hmm.
I think I saw the Jordan Peterson video back when there was this iron curtain behind all the left tuber content, right? Like I never found you through Sean, I never found you through
Hmm.
ContraPoints or anything
Okay.
like that. But what made you want to go after these individuals specifically? Was it just because in Germany, do you guys get exposed to them as much as we do over here in Canada?
It depends. Like we got some exposure to Jordan Peterson. Sadly,
Okay,
he made his way over the pond, and his book was in my local bookstore, which is very small.
I apologize.
Um, yeah. What's up with like all these reactionaries coming from Canada? Like,
That's what
did they
everyone
get bad
says.
on the way to the United States, or what's happening? Um, I don't know. I think I was just like I was always in this like YouTube sphere, like watching like H Bomber guy, Sean, etc., etc.,
Hmm.
and like was aware of some of these people.
Hmm.
And then when you just start out making videos and you look, hey, what content could I do? Like Steven Crowder, I think is probably like when it comes to these like reactionary YouTubers, probably like the biggest one,
Hmm.
isn't he?
Hmm.
Like I think his videos
3 million
regularly
at,
get
at,
over a million
at the
views.
time
Yeah.
of this interview. I think he's got about 3 point something subs, something around there. So yeah,
Yeah,
he's
he's
definitely one of the most monstrous.
yeah, he's yeah. So I think he's one of the largest, and
Mhm.
I think he's one of the worst offenders besides being outright an outright fascist, you know? Um, and still having mass appeal. I think I did 2 videos on him. One where he says Hitler was a liberal socialist,
Mhm.
and the other one where he says the Crusades were defensive, not because of any particular fact, but basically because Muslims are violent savages, and
Yeah.
we needed to save ourselves from uh, living ISIS style in Europe. Is basically what his argument is.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, yeah, I don't know. I think um, me being like not, I don't want to say growing up, but spending some time in this like YouTube sphere and being exposed to these people, that probably gives motivation to try to correct some misinformation going on there.
Mhm. When did your channel first start catching fire? How did that come about?
Um, so I started in April last year, and after I think a month or 2 months, I had about uh, 1,800 subscribers, not very much.
Mhm.
And then one of my videos got deleted off the website, as happens regularly nowadays.
Yeah.
And a bunch of awesome people mirrored that all over YouTube.
Oh,
And I
okay.
kind of jumped, like, I think almost up to 10,000 subscribers at that point. And then I got exposed to other YouTubers who kept sharing my stuff. Like, it's like a snowball effect, you know?
Mhm.
Like that initial jump from, I think, 2,000 subscribers to 10,000
Mhm.
happened through like this collective effort of mirroring my stuff all over the website. And after, I don't know, I think the algorithm treated me uh, rather good.
Mhm.
Besides when it deletes my videos, but yeah, I don't know. It kind of worked.
What
You
was
know
what was
how
the
like
reason
it's
for the
magic,
video?
what works and what doesn't.
What was the reason for your video being deleted? Was it that typical like
I don't know.
okay.
At the time, I was pretty sure this was like some mass flagging campaign because at the time that was like when the whole internet blood spots thing was going on. So when the alt right on YouTube was at its like most
Zenith?
in the forefront. This was also like pre Charlottesville.
Okay.
Um, and I was pretty sure it was that because after a review, it got reinstated,
Mhm.
and then it got taken down again. Oh no, it got deleted 2 months ago with like the when YouTube updated its content lines towards white supremacy. Yeah, then it got deleted for good.
Mm. Okay.
Um, yeah.
Um, if I could put on take off my Lance hat and put on my Fox News hat for just a moment here.
Mm.
How do you respond to some of the most typical charges? Because I think you're going to be much more eloquent at explaining this than I will be. Uh, the first one being that the Nazis were socialists because it was the National Socialist Party of not of Germany.
Okay, yeah. I mean, what I think is like what drives the bullet through this argument is that let's say that was the case,
Hmm.
like why does that not manifest anywhere in history, especially prior to the Nazis like taking power?
Hmm.
Because one of the reasons Germany was so bitter and the Nazis got so much material to work with and twist for political power was the idea that Germany didn't really lose World War One,
Hmm.
but that they were like stabbed in the back by the people at home,
Hmm.
by the socialists,
Hmm.
the Bolsheviks,
Hmm.
who were basically like mild socialists, but were called Bolsheviks,
Yeah.
and the Nazis like connected this to the Jews at home, etc., etc.
Hmm.
So like this was like their main thing before they got power, and like that alone, like that theory alone doesn't work if they are actually socialists. Like
Hmm.
they would they would cut their own throats in that scenario. So um, yeah, I mean there are like countless things you could say. You know, why did they throw socialists in concentration camps? Why didn't they care about like any kind of class system, but prioritize the racial system, stuff like that?
Hmm. And what about the fact that Germany was, in many ways, a capitalist? Well, was running under a capitalist system, right? There were still capital businesses that thrived. Not to mention American chains that had to change their entire names to operate within Germany, right? Whereas, like, I think it was Coca-Cola or Pepsi became Fanta.
Hmm.
IBM actually developed the entire structure and cataloging system for um, what is it, for tracking and keeping track of all the different degenerates or what they saw as degenerates within society, things like
Hmm.
that. So I think it was still, there was social programs within a firmly capitalist system, correct?
Yeah, exactly. So the Nazis always played up this aspect of social
Hmm.
when they were talking to the average voter. and were playing up the aspect of national when they were talking to like heavy businesses. They didn't have much business support prior to gaining power, besides like the Thyssen company, who is like steelworks and stuff. For this reason, because they like played up this rhetoric of seizing property, etc., like crony capitalism. But when the rubber met the road, they made clear that they don't have an interest in redistributing property, except if you were Jewish. And the economic system that came out of it was a market system where firms were urged to act according to the interests of the ruling party, basically, up until 1942, where it became a planned economy like it did in other nations taking part in the war. That's just like happens if you're mobilized for a collective effort of beating another nation. That's not because of like socialist ideals or anything.
Second Fox News talking point that I wanted to get you to dismantle was the idea that the Nazis themselves were voted into power.
I mean, kind of. The idea where like a Fox News viewer, I guess, would bring this up is to argue against like direct democracy, I guess. You know, you shouldn't have give the electorate total power. They were, in a sense, like, for instance, Germany didn't have a 5% hurdle for parties, which it now does. So if your party gets 1% at the national elections, you get 1% of the parliament seats, which forced any kind of coalitions to incorporate the views of fringe parties, etc., etc. It was a very unstable system. And shortly before the collapse of the Weimar Republic, early 1930s, the Nazi Party came out as the biggest party. They didn't have the absolute majority. They had about like 35%, but they were the biggest party. So they got the privilege, of setting the chancellor. So it was a representative system. It wasn't like a direct democracy. I wouldn't say like the Nazis got directly voted in, but they certainly had a democratic mandate within that system, which after World War II got a significant overhaul because of those flaws.
But they didn't assume like unilateral power until the false flag fire, correct?
Yeah, exactly. No, like they, as you said, like before the Reichstag fire, which had like everyone shaking in their boots of a communist takeover, they didn't have absolute power. Like after 1930, it was like already like a broken democracy because it relied so much on executive orders by the president. But it didn't really take its form as we understand it after the Reichstag fire, as you just said, like as this absolute dictatorship. And after that, the office of the president and chancellor morphed into one, which became Adolf Hitler. So removed that duality there, and then that was it for the first national German democracy.
In terms of Fox News talking point number 3, and this is the last one, I promise. I know that's why you came on the show.
I love this.
You basically should really be thanking the United States for liberating you and saving the world, correct? As the absolute saviors of World War II.
I mean, I don't know. It's like I'm so torn between this because obviously the brunt of the burden was borne by the Soviet Union in World War II.
Yeah,
but
absolutely
that the biggest part of Germany got to enjoy democracy is not exclusively owed to America, but to the Western Allies.
Yeah,
you know. Because if let's say United States didn't enter the war and all of Germany was liberated by the Soviet Union, all of Germany would most likely have been like a Soviet puppet state as East Germany was.
Yeah. This is actually an actual question I wanted to know something about. Why didn't Germany ever collaborate with the Japanese? Was it racism? Like they were obviously allies, but they never had a coordinated military attack. Like they never attacked Russia from both sides, for example.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't just like that much in it for the Japanese to attack Russia. Like they were much more interested in hegemony over the Pacific. So, yeah, I mean, they were like called ordinary Aryans, but like like there was no kind of like joint military effort between the two.
Mhm. Um, can you explain to people who are probably unfamiliar with this what Germany did post World War II in order to both ameliorate what they had done, I guess, to the Jewish people, but also to change conditions so that that would never happen again? Because I think that's something that people, especially Americans, kind of overlook. And I often compare that to their response to, say, slavery.
Hmm. Yeah. So basically, after World War II, everyone was like, obviously, man, war is some bullshit. What happened here? Um, and the process of Germany as it is right now, like taking full responsibility for the crimes of the Nazis,
Mhm.
um, was like a very painful and step-by-step process. It's often assumed that, after World War II, Germany said, well, okay, then um, I guess that kind of sucked. Let's make up for it.
Mhm.
But that is not really how it happened. Like up until the 60s or mid 60s, a lot of Germans didn't even know what Auschwitz was, for
Mhm.
instance. Um, really uncovering like the massive horror that the Nazi regime was really took time and was a big challenge. For instance, right after the fall of the Nazi regime of the Third Reich, um, most Germans, according to one poll, which I said in a video of mine, I don't know where it is specifically, but you can look it up,
Mhm.
thought that the Allies were the real war criminals. For instance,
Interesting.
yeah,
Was that because
and
of the post World War II, rapes and things like that that were occurring by allies, or?
I mean, I think the German population was mostly didn't see like what the Nazis did in the Soviet Union and Poland and other places,
Mhm.
and they just witnessed what they call like the bomb terror,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
and were didn't know what was going on outside of the country, so
Mhm.
they didn't really have like a fair comparison.
Mhm.
Um, and I think um, it's all like these like little efforts that really make up the sum of its parts. For instance, in all of Europe, but especially in Germany, there's something called Stolpersteine, like I don't know, stepping stones, tripping stones,
Mhm.
which are like little golden stones, like plaques in the floor in front of every house where a Jewish family or citizen lived who was deported and then murdered, where you can see
Oh
his
wow.
name, the place he was born, and at which date he or she approximately died and where.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Um,
That's
a-
crazy.
yeah, and you can find those in every town in Germany. And in other parts of Europe as well, like in the Netherlands and Austria, like in all parts who were under German occupation, basically.
Mhm.
And yeah, a lot of it's is education as well,
Mhm. Yeah, of
And I
course.
think because like they immediately took up the effort of uh, remedying as much as you can do. You can never like make up for it really, but you can at least give your best.
Mhm.
I think that's why a lot of like the burden isn't as much present in younger generations.
Mhm.
There's always there like is a feeling of yeah, not it's already done, but
Mhm.
like we're on a good way
Yeah.
right now, which is why it's not such a contentious topic as reparations in the United States,
Mhm.
for instance.
Well, I'm surprised it's the American elections that are getting you depressed, because when I follow European elections, that's when things really are getting. I mean, like, how do you feel about just the rise of so many far right administrations and governance in Europe right now?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, it's kind of scary. I mean, mostly these are like these in the past were like countries who were like kind of far away, go down
Hmm.
in Greece,
Hmm.
Hungary, and with the last European election, like Le Pen had like insane results, like France's far right party,
Yeah, yeah.
and France and Germany are like kind of like they're not the leaders of the EU, but
Hmm.
it is a very powerful bloc who
Of course.
um used to like I don't want to say lead the way, but like try to push the bloc into a certain direction.
Hmm.
And seeing one of these two countries like fall into like proto-fascism with Le Pen, like our far right party is like polling at 15%,
Hmm.
14% right now.
Yeah.
That's quite scary, and I'm still hoping that. now that the refugee crisis is over,
Mhm.
or this refugee crisis is over, that a lot of the support will fizzle out.
Mhm.
But I'm not so sure of that. Like, it probably depends on the country in itself. For instance, our far right party, the AfD,
Mhm.
wasn't like didn't jump up because of immigration. They jumped up during the Greek financial crisis, where there were a lot of like boomer sentiments. Oh, we're giving the Greeks all of our hard-earned tax money,
That
not
sounds American.
understanding that that Germany was insanely profiting
Mhm.
of that situation,
Yeah.
to a degree where they like were exploiting Greece and making
Wasn't
bank
Germany and
off
France
of it.
both the banks in both countries were profiting off that?
Yeah, I mean, like all of Western Europe basically who jumped in to pay for these emergency funds that were given to Greece, but Germany was the biggest contributor to those.
Mm.
Um, and when that kind of died down and went out of the press, they
Mhm.
completely disappeared,
Mhm.
like our far right party did. And then when the refugee crisis happened,
Mhm.
they got a ton of votes again, and now they're at 15%, like one of our largest parties in the country. Um, but
Because
I
Ge
also feel like that now that they exist,
yeah.
there's probably just like they're just this way of expressing this racial panic or this fear of being replaced or the country moving too fast that people have now found a way to express themselves in without being socially ostracized.
Mhm. At the same time. And Chancellor Merkel, she's considered like the right-wing party, not not the centrist party?
Yeah, she's part of the Christian conservatives,
Right.
which are like our one of our right wing parties.
Mhm.
But they are like conservative in every sense of the word. They're
Mhm.
not like they're not crazy hard right on immigration, but they are considered in the right spectrum.
Mhm.
And Merkel was a chancellor who was very pragmatic in a
Mhm.
lot of sense. She was like a conservative hardliner, but now that she's gonna go,
Mhm.
she's a lame duck chancellor right now. Like the conservatives might shift further to the right to try to get back some of the votes from the AfD.
And
Who knows?
what about left parties in Germany? Are they just non-existent, or they just don't stand a chance, or
I mean, the big workers' party that Germany has I should say,
Okay.
are the Social Democrats, the
Mhm.
SPD, and they're like in free fall right now. They have
Oh, no.
almost like they used to poll at, I think when they announced their chancellor candidate before our last federal election, they were even polling ahead of the conservatives. They were like at 26, 27%.
Mhm.
And now they're, depending on which poll, like 13, 12%. And the problem with the social democratic movement in Germany is the same, which it was with the Labour movement in the UK before
Mhm.
Corbyn, or with like the Bill Clinton Democrats. That they just made a huge shift towards neoliberal policies.
Yeah.
Um, with us in Germany, this was Gerhard Schröder when the Social Democrats actually um, were strong enough to set the chancellor, was a chancellor from their party,
Mhm.
and they gutted social spending and the welfare state. And now people just don't buy it anymore when they say, "Well, actually, let's do left-wing policy."
Mhm.
Like a lot of German voters, like their worker voter base,
Mhm.
the Social Democrats in Germany once were the largest political movement in the entire world, like over a
Mhm.
million members.
Mhm.
They just don't buy it anymore and are like kind of lost right now. A lot of them are wandering to the Greens,
Mhm.
to our Green Party, which are obviously environmental party, but who
Yeah.
are economically speaking more aligned with the conservatives
Really
than with the
interesting.
social democrats. Yeah, like they when they started out in the 80s, they had like a significant wing that was anti-capitalist,
Mhm.
but that's completely fizzled out like
Mhm.
by now.
Mhm.
Like one of their election slogans at the last election was, "There doesn't have to be an or between economy and environment."
Hmm.
So for which kind of person they're going.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then the last like major left wing party that we have is the Left Party.
Mhm.
But yeah, like they're also like lacking any kind of like big direction really. Like every couple of months they're like in the news because of some weird proposal like legalizing all drugs, which is a proposal you can absolutely defend.
Mhm.
But like the average 60-year-old Bavarian is not going to understand that. Like,
No, it's also very easy
no,
for opponents to poke holes in that, you know.
yeah, and they're also like depending on which politician they're close to, like the Russians, and a lot of Germans don't take kindly to that stuff like that.
Fair
Yeah,
enough. What are your thoughts on the Great White Homunculus, Boris Johnson?
I mean he's in Germany today. I think he met
No way, good timing.
Angela Merkel. I think he met Angela Merkel today.
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I don't know what to say. The Brits are at it again. The EU said this is the deal. You can't. It's not negotiable. And now he comes into office and says, "Hey, why don't we negotiate the deal?" And then the EU says no, and we start over again. Like it's like time is a flat circle. I feel like Matthew McConaughey in True
Yeah, I
Detective,
know.
like reading Brexit news.
Yeah. Gotta keep suffering over and over.
Yeah, I think with him, the UK is right now the closest it ever got to actually getting a no deal Brexit. Because I don't think the EU is going to budge on
Absolutely not.
On the key issue of the Irish backstop. I can't imagine that happening.
No. But in which case, I'm like, they're still going to do it? Like, they're going to go ahead with this? It's going to happen, really?
I mean, I don't know. Like they're kind of like back to the wall here because they said, "Oh, Brexit is this great idea. We should totally do it. Everyone's going to have more money. The money birds are going to come back and build hospitals. Like,
trickle up economics."
I said. Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And they promised stuff that they just couldn't. They can't cash in basically. And now they are realizing that they're in a much weaker negotiating position than they thought they were. And but they still have this democratic mandate that they have to do the Brexit, which they can't do in a satisfying manner because they oversold it prior to the vote. So yeah, I mean, I guess it's going to happen. Like, a big part of the country still wants to leave, so I assume it's going to happen unless Corbyn saves them.
Yeah, well, no, wouldn't that be lovely? I'm going to pivot just slightly here and allow you in your own words to explain the symbol of the three arrows, because I know it's associated with other organizations, but the historical context of it I think is quite fascinating, and it's a fantastic symbol to use in my opinion.
You don't think it makes me an Antifa extremist?
I can't comment on that. TOS.
Yeah, okay. So when I started out this channel, I just had this because I obviously was always doing history stuff. I had this on my desktop, and I just used it as a placeholder. And I thought, if the channel grows or if it develops into something, I'm going to change it to something cool. Like for my first 100 subscribers, my channel name was just Daniel, my first name.
Imposing.
Yeah. And I don't know. And then I just ran with it. So where the symbol comes from is that amidst this crisis in Weimar Germany, there were three factions who all hated each other. The Nazis, the Social Democrats, and the Communists. The Social Democrats, in theory, were still pretty much socialists. They weren't revolutionaries anymore, but they were still socialists. But they had a big falling out with the Communists, and there was no way they were going to set up a united front with the Nazis. And the Nazis obviously had their goons to intimidate people, the brown shirts. The Communists had their goons as well, Rote Einheitsfront, like the Red Front Soldier Union, something like that. And in this intense, violent political climate, the Social Democrats said, "Hey, why don't we do something similar and set up the Iron Front?" It sounds very dramatic, but it's all of these paramilitary organizations who have front in the name. It's because most of the participants used to be are veterans from the First World War, and created the symbol for themselves, which was made to cross out the swastika, which he did a good job doing.
Yeah.
And fought Nazis in the streets did their best, but at that point in time, it was way too late, and they weren't effective enough, and then kind of fizzled out and were made illegal after the Reichstag fire in 1933, and never really were like a force to be reckoned with in Germany in that sense. But I just thought it was a neat symbol to use, and I just like ran with it. And then after, nobody's gonna believe is gonna believe this, but after I found out that this was like still used by like American anti-fascists. It's not used in Germany as much. I haven't seen it personally, but it's like pretty strongly used by like the anti-fascists in the United States, which I don't want to say gets me into hot water, but makes me get associated with them a lot of times.
So you're basically the OG anti-fascist.
Yeah, I'm major Antifa.
What are your thoughts on basically what's happening in Portland and Mr. Andy Ngo and his mischaracterization of the events?
It's insane to me that like stuff like Portland gets so much press coverage in the United States.
Yeah.
I can't understand for the life of me. Like, okay, just gonna say this: punching people is wrong. We're very anti-political violence on this stream, obviously. But like Andy NGO getting punched and him having like Tucker Carlson going on Joe Rogan, having Jake Tapper say, "Oh, Antifa attacking journalists again." Like I don't understand that at all in a country of 360 million people. That was so bizarre to me that got this amount of attention, especially because at the same time in Germany, like our constitutional protection agency, which are like who are supposed to protect democracy, uncovered like a right-wing network who had already like stockpiled guns, ordered 200 body bags, and created like a hit list of left-wing politicians and journalists they were going to execute, and already executed one of them in his backyard with a bullet to the head.
Wow.
And reading that in the German newspaper and then seeing my Twitter feed light up because NGO got punched was really bizarre. I don't know why that creates as much.
I think the amazing story was that he actually was one of the first Americans to have a superpower, because he was doing this all with a brain hemorrhage, you see. So 24 hours after being released from the hospital, he was capable of doing a 24-hour press circuit. Like I don't think that's ever been done. So that's probably why. Yeah,
it must have been those concrete milkshakes. There's something else in them.
Yeah, to me though, it never ceases to amaze me that someone who is like anyone who associates themselves with the term anti-fascist is now seen as like the villain in the story, or the terrorist organization in the story. Like, that's something I'll never, I think, come to terms with.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Like, if you like anyone who's approaching the situation honestly knows that like right-wing extremist violence is like it's not even like this. It's not the same league. It's not even the same sport as left-wing violence in the United States. So that to get so much attention and to be like talked about by the president as talking about like maybe we should classify this as a terrorist organization, you should ask yourself, well, why are they actually paying so much attention to this, and do they maybe get a benefit from that?
Absolutely.
Did you enjoy what you just watched and now crave more nectar of the damned? Did you know that if you're watching on YouTube, you're only getting half the surfy experience? We upload all of our content commercial and censorship free to our Patreon. Due to the general demonetization of our videos, we now upload half of our original content directly to those who can help us produce this show. Want even more nectar than that? Well, come join us at twitch.tv/TheSerfsTV, where we do weekly live streams, debates, interviews, AMAs, and more. If you're an Amazon Prime member, you can help support our show 100% free by subscribing to our Twitch channel. So come join us, be merry, and know that your support is helping us do great things.
Like pay rent and eat.
We now worship at the altar of Miranda Marone and Sappy Rat. Do check out their SoundCloud and Discord respectively, and thank them so much for supporting the Serfs. A big thanks to our lords Kyle C. and Ricky Pilgrim. You truly are the pillars of our organization. And also a big thank you to Josh Mickelson, Schizosaurus, Dr. Zayas, Dylan Byth, Andrea Lynn Epperly, Daniel Kahn, Angela, Barbara Sherman, Jed Lewis, Elabin Dudayev, Beck Hewitt, and Todd Lajeunesse.